Hi, I'm Bex, aka Pretzels, and today we're going to be reviewing this book. Let's get into it. So, the book is The How and the Why by Cynthia, and I hated it. So, to organize my thoughts into a manageable way, I made this into a numbered list a la Jenny Nicholson. So, the main character, sorry if I'm looking down, my script is over here, so. In the first chapter, which is not a letter, so the book is arranged in letters and then chapters, and it's mostly like the chapter, the plot moving forward, and then there's chapters. So in the first chapter, we are introduced to the character that we will be spending the entirety of the book with. She happens to be absolutely insufferable and also different from other people in her generation. So Cassie, that's her name, Cassie, she just turned 18 and I'm just gonna turn to it. She says, so she just turned 18 and she's made it her goal to have sex, and that whole, so the lock clicks and the door swings open, but I stop and turn to face Nyla. I want to have sex, I announce, but I think it's time, I'm ready. So that whole interlude right there becomes a running joke in the whole of the book. But it's not, oh, sorry, I didn't move forward. Basically because it was a surprise party, like she was going to a surprise party, and her family just heard her say that she wants to have sex, and that turns into a very unfunny joke throughout the whole book. So it just gets brought up over and over again, and it's very tired because it wasn't funny the first time. But on the topic of her being not like everyone in her generation, she's like, she talking about Nyla, she's texting and driving. She knows I loathe driving and texting. I hate texting, period. Especially when you're supposed to be having a real time with someone. Like, this is the character we just met, right? So, we just met her, and now we know her feelings on, we know, like, obviously texting and driving, I don't condone that, but, like, I just don't like when authors try to make their characters so very unique and different from other people in their generation, because it's like, that's not a enjoyable character to read, because you want to be able to relate to the character. I don't know, this is a very tired subject, and it's just, I don't know, and it's not written well either. But that's the thing that I'll get into later. Our Cassie, the main character, is adopted, which is that's basically the whole plot of the book. Well, one of the whole plots of the book. Get into that later. So she loves her adopted parents, obviously. But, like, okay, it's shoved down the reader's throat just how great her adoptive parents are. Like, over and over and over again, it's like, my dad, she doesn't say adoptive dad, like, that would be weird. My dad is so cool, and he's so zany and different. Not exactly, but basically, like, you get the gist. And it's like, not only is Cassie weird and a little bit different from the people in her generation, her dad is also weird and different, and her mom, oh my gosh, she has a sick mom, you guys, because we've never seen that before in any form of media. It's shoved down the reader's throat just how cool and different her parents are. Her dad is a zany, cool 5th grade teacher, and her mom is a fantastic baker, but she has heart failure and is horribly sick. This gives our protagonist emotional depth, not really, and a touching backstory. It definitely is not draining to read every 4 pages. Next thing, this is going to be both sort of a I hate the main character and the writing's bad in this book. So there's this little, I guess, plot device maybe that's used several times in the book, and it's called, like, the green monster that and Cassie brings it up. She's just like, okay, she's gone weirdly quiet, especially when she's landed her desired role. When I put two and two together, Nyla's going to be Cinderella, and Bastian's going to be Cinderella's prince. They're going to be romantic leads. The green monster swivels around to sneer at me. So that's not the, like, obviously the reader can infer that it's the green monster is referencing envy, but okay, it's never really introduced to the reader. It's just like, here is this thing that Cassie references multiple times throughout the book, and you just have to understand that this is a thing that Cassie references multiple times throughout the book, and you don't get to know why. This is important enough for me to put in the book multiple times, but not important enough for me to what's the word I'm looking for? Oh, not important enough for me to say why it's referenced multiple times throughout the book. Okay, so that's the bad writing part of it. The I hate the main character part of it is, it's always in reference to Nyla, the girl who is supposedly her best friend. And it's like, yeah, you can be jealous of your best friends, and I think I think that it happens sometimes, but like, you shouldn't be jealous of your friends all the time something good happens to them. In fact, if you are jealous of your friends all the time something happens to them, that's not a healthy emotional response. And so it's like, we're supposed to be rooting for Cassie, but I'm not rooting for her, and I actually hate her. Because why is she always jealous of the girl she calls her best friend? Why does she in turn have this emotional response where she doesn't want that good thing to be happening to her, or to the girl she calls her best friend? Like, what's going on? Where's the disconnect? So, yeah. Next, Cassie is a wonderful, fantastic angel of a daughter. She's never done anything wrong. She's only lied twice in her entire life. And I don't know, this is just a little thing that I touched on a little bit. Where's the note? I just touched on it a little bit, and I said it doesn't make her a believable protagonist because we want a character who is well-rounded, who has flaws. And I've made like, in most of my videos where I talk about a good book, I talk about how the characters have flaws, and that's why they're so good, because you can relate to them because they're so human, you know? And that's not Cassie. Cassie's wonderful, and she's a perfect angel saint. She never ever does anything wrong, you know. She's just perfect, and no one ever, she can't do anything wrong. Everyone always loves her, except for, you know, that like one time she gets in a fight over something really serious actually, but then she makes up. It's all made up, and Cassie again, it's just like brushed over and no biggie. It's like, oh my gosh, are you serious? Why is this happening? And it's just like, not a believable protagonist, not a likable protagonist either, because the reader, well, me, the reader, I don't know about everyone else who read this book, but me, the reader, doesn't like this character. They're not flawed, they're not well-rounded, they don't have any depth to their character, and more than that, oh my gosh, this girl's annoying. So that leads me into my next point. Cassie's so selfish. She's a selfish little brat. She doesn't care about anyone with herself, and every interaction she has with any other character, she's always bringing it back to herself. This has to be about Cassie. In case you didn't know, Cassie's mom is dying, so that means that everything has to be about Cassie. I hate this girl. She's not even real. But it's like, and it's not even like, okay, so I've talked about having a good hateable character before, right? And how having a good hateable character is someone who, you know, you can see their flaws, and they're obviously not a good person, and you want to hate them because they're not a good person. That's not what Cassie is. Cassie is this character is supposed to be likable, and it's supposed to be the main character, and it's supposed to be the protagonist, and everyone's supposed to like them. but you don't, because they're annoying, and the real world doesn't seem to have any consequences for them, and obviously they're not a real person. I understand that. To wrap this section up, Cassie is not fun to read. She's not a fun character to read through her lens. She comes off as pretentious and snotty and self-centered. She's like a little brat who has a meltdown when anything doesn't go her way. Reading from her point of view is very frustrating because you, the reader, or me, the reader, you're not rooting for her. You don't want things to go her way, but the writer just brushes off all the consequences that Cassie might have. And it's not interesting or fun or an enjoyable experience to read through Cassie's lens or to read this book at all. This isn't a fun book. It was frustrating. It made me angry. I'm getting too far ahead in the script. Reel it back. It's the third time I'm trying to film this part. because I keep losing footage. But I will persevere. This is gonna probably be the longest section of this video, and it's directly addressing how this book is written, and it's gonna be broken up into multiple chunks. But so the first chunk. The jokes suck. It seems like it's not important, and it kind of isn't important, but I already talked about how it's not, like, the little not funny little part in the very beginning, and how that joke is brought up over and over and over again. Comedy is a hard thing to write, but it sort of brings up the fact that this book doesn't need comedy, and it's added because, I don't know, the author wants to address every demographic. So here's comedy, but the jokes aren't funny. You don't need to add comedy to this. It would be the same book without it. This next part, which I will be calling All or Nothing, either adds way too many details to this book or not enough. And what I mean is, there are parts of this book that just have so much meaningless fluff added just for the sake of fluff. And it's like, why did I need this? I didn't need this, and it's just here for being here, and wow. And it's like, did I need to know why all of these characters are called such and such? No, probably not. The book would have been the exact same without it. And I'm not saying that you can't add little details here and there. I'm not, like, they can make a book more interesting, can make a book more compelling to read, but the way that it's done in this just feels like, oh, I'm trying to reach a certain word count, so let me add in this here and this here and this here. But what should have been done is the author should have actually added detail where it mattered. So let me read to you a section that frustrated me in this context. Here goes. Mama Joe has called out a name I don't know. It's the new guy. He ambles up the stairs onto the stage like he's been here a million times. He tells Mama Joe he's going to sing Stars from Les Mis, a challenging song to say the least, but one of my all-time faves. He takes a minute to stretch, raises his arms above his head, drops them, rolls his head from side to side, shakes out his hands. Whoa, Nyla says after a minute. New guy can sing. So, there's a little bit, it goes on a little bit after that, but I don't want to drag this on. Essentially, what I mean by this is, there are little points that could have been sharpened, and the details added, and descriptive imagery added to the book, that would have just made it so much more interesting, more compelling to read, would have given the reader so much more to work with. It was like we were fed crumbs, and then at other times we were given a feast when we weren't hungry. You understand? And frankly, I'm tired. However, more important than this, there were huge, pivotal moments in the story that got one line to a paragraph devoted to them. And that's it. That's all we got of description about these giant moments in the plot. And it was infuriating. I literally screamed. I literally was screaming. I was so angry. So, here is what I mean. During the state drama competition, which is a giant moment, it's something that Nyla and Cassie have been working towards this whole time. Not the whole time, but like, blah, 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 the whole time. It's basically going to decide Cassie's future, whether she can go to College of Iowa or not. And so it's been leading up to this, been building up to this peak, to this point, and so there's a lot of anticipation for this moment. So here's the line. A door down the hall opens and a judge sticks his head out. Cass McMurtry and Nyla Henderson, we jump up. That's us. You doing the miracle worker? Yes, sir, I say. All right, come on in. Nyla and I do our lucky fist bump. We follow the judge into the room where they've already set up our makeshift set. A line of 3 judges is seated. I smile. The thing is, I'm always pretty good under pressure. Let's work some miracles, Nyla whispers. After that, and we did indeed kick butt. So that's that one little line, and we did indeed kick butt, is what we get to learn, to see their performance. 7 words. 7 words. And they win the whole competition. 7 words to learn that they win the whole competition. And it's not just that they win this whole competition. It's that we are told this whole time that Nyla and Cassie are great actors. This whole book. But we never really get to see it. We never get to see them act or really even sing. We're just told it this whole time. That, oh, they're great actors and they win the competition, and they're great actors and they win the competition, but why? Why are they great actors? Can you please show us some of this? It's all show and don't tell. I'm sorry. I hate that line. I wrote it so many times on these stupid sticky notes. But show, don't tell. It happens again later on in the book. I'm not gonna mention it because I already did it twice and I feel like it's just beating a dead horse. But it's ridiculous. Moving on. This is a subjective thing, right? So I'm not going to get as heated, but this sort of ties into what I said about Cassie being an unlikable and a frustrating, like, narrator. This book was a difficult read because it felt like, okay, so this book is written in first person. It's written in present tense, and it felt like Cassie, who's clearly the narrator, was so present in the narrating. And generally for first person, it's like, you know the thoughts and feelings of the narrator. I don't know how to describe, like, but it's not like the narrator is speaking to the reader. It's like you're in the narration because you're just reading from the narrator's perspective, you know? You're there because you're there because you're reading from the narrator's perspective, not because the narrator is telling you, unless it's like Great Gatsby and Nick Carraway is literally telling it to you, like a story type thing, like that, you know? And this, I didn't get that from this book, like, it didn't give that to me, and it's literally the style of the book, so I'm not critiquing it and saying, this is bad writing. This is just a subjective, and I didn't enjoy reading it like that, because I didn't enjoy reading Cassie, so it's just a subjective thing. The tone was weird, and sort of hard to stay with, but, it's just a bunch of garbled thoughts in my head. Moving on to the conflict, so there was, like, way too much conflict, but at the same time, like, the conflict felt very lackluster. So the book starts, we learn that Cassie wants a boyfriend through that stupid joke that I already talked about way too much, and this plot thread takes up way too much of the book. This is not why, well, yeah, if you read the inside cover of this book, you would not be expecting a romance, but that's what, like, I would say 45 maybe % of this book is devoted to this weird romance and weird friendship thing that goes on. Then, after that little, like, thing that we learn that Cassie wants a boyfriend, we learn that her mom is literally dying. This is probably the biggest part of the book, this plot thread here. So it takes up maybe 50% of the book, I would say. Maybe not 50, maybe another 45. That's literally 90% of the book. I'm gonna go over 100% of the book. And it's, oh, there's a deer outside my window. There's deer everywhere. I don't know, I'm surprised by that. And I would say it's a good plot thread. As far as the conflict in this book goes, I would say it gives this one a strong A. It stays on, it's good with what the book is actually about, or says it's about, and not really a ton of points about this one. Just good with that. Next, we learn that Cassie's dad wants her to go to BSU, Boise State, but she does not. So then this whole college thing, I think for B-plot, pretty good, you know. It's like for like a coming of age story. I think relevant, I think, it occupies a lot of the plot, maybe another 45, which puts us way over 100%, but, I'm gonna knock down the love story plot to 35, but still over 100%. But it ties into the letters, so I really liked that. I thought that it was like a nice way to bring it into that, which you didn't really have with anything else in this book. So, good. I thought this was a compelling B-plot. Then we find out that Cassie wants to find her adopted mom. Okay, this is essentially, this is what the front cover says the book is about. And this is why I started reading the book. I was like, oh, that sounds like not her adopted mom, her biological mom. I keep saying that. She wants to find her bio mother, right? Okay. And so, that's what the front cover says that this book is about, because she feels like she's missing a part of herself, you know. Okay, sounds compelling, sounds interesting, you want to read that, right? Too bad that this book isn't about that. Too bad that this book devotes way too much time to a bunch of other meaningless garbage. Can you see that I'm angry about it? 15% maybe of this book. You guys are like, your math is way off. Listen, I'm a social sciences major. So, I never ever said that my math was gonna be good. This book I wanted more of that conflict and less of everything that has to do with Sebastian. But everything I got was, I don't know. I just didn't care about Cassie, so I think that was my problem with the book. I did not care about Cassie. And then the last thing that we know is she can't afford to go to college. This one goes like directly in with the other college plot. I think that it's a pretty like okay B plot, but not the most convincing, because like this is literally like an all or nothing type plot. Like if I don't get enough money, if I don't win this competition, the state drama competition, I won't be able to go to the college that I want to go to, which seems a little dramatic to me because of grants, scholarships, student loans. But the reason that those things are cast off is because of she doesn't want to get into a ton of debt. But if we are supposed to believe, like we are told, that she is one of the best actors in the state, then this tiny little liberal arts private school is going to have a ton of money, one would assume, to give out to the best actors in the state, such as her. Do you guys see where the logic? Do you guys see where I'm connecting the dots? And yeah, it probably wouldn't cover all of tuition, but that's where the grants and the scholarships come in. The grants and the loans come in, right? If she doesn't have enough money to go to anywhere but a state school, like, the pass is gonna come in. And at the end of the day, if this is really your dream college, you're gonna be able to go to your dream college, right? Your parents aren't going to stop you by saying, well, we don't really have enough money for that. I just didn't find it all that convincing of a plot, and again, it covered like a ton of the time in this book. So again, you guys are like, your math is way off on that, and I think I'm gonna say that was on purpose, even though it wasn't on purpose. But it's like, because this book tried to do too much, I'm gonna say it was on. So then, on to this, which I already talked about a little bit earlier in this section, is that this book reads like a manual. Manual? Manual. How do you say that word? Manual, you guys. Okay. But like I said, it was severely lacking in descriptive imagery, to the point where it's basically impossible to read. Almost every time anything emotional happened, Cassie was like, my eyes filled with tears. I'm like, what happened with her eyes? Give me more, you know? Like, I know I already said this, but like, show me. Don't tell me. It was so hard to read. I read a page, I screamed into Lemmy. Say hi, Lemmy. I screamed into Lemmy. Picked up the book, read another page, screamed into Lemmy, just kept going from there. Because, going back to the conflict thing, the plot didn't actually pick up until at least 100 pages in. So it's like, we have all of this stuff going on, but you don't actually have any plot. It's just stuff happening. So it's like, what is going on? What? Huh? Your eyes are jumping all over. So it's like, you have all this stuff shoved in here all over the place. It just feels like a ton of exposition. But onto my last point about the writing. It's that this book is painfully uninspired. It's just boring. It doesn't bring anything new or fun or interesting or cool to the table. It's just an overused plot with overused boring plot devices. I started out this book with very high hopes because it seemed like a book that was going to be interesting, that was going to be something different, you know, a coming of age novel that had something new and different to bring. But it wasn't that. It was just a boring book. And it just wasn't a fun book to read. Gucci. And so they added another guy. This is Chocolate. Chocolate, stay up. For goodness sake. I'll keep this short. Sebastian's character is poorly written. So, his storyline, like I already said, was not needed. Oh, it's on the ground. I don't want to get up. I do want to give props to this writer for something other than the letters. Sebastian's storyline was a really good use of dramatic irony, which is not something that you see often used in literature these days. So, to Cynthia Hand, I say good job. Sebastian isn't the only character. Like I said, like I have said, sorry, in the, like, how this book is uninspired and there are so many tropes, am I speaking English? This book uses, lots of tropes, and the gay best friend is one of them. However, we don't really know, well, we, the readers, or me, the reader, does know that he's gay, hence dramatic irony. We get to the little thing, at the end with the little, I'm gonna call it a virtue signal. I feel like I have the right to say this. But, okay. Let me read. Okay. He looks sad. He looks sad. Sounds like maybe she broke yours too, I say. He shakes his head. No, it's not like that. It's just, that was a hard time for me. I know who I was, the real me, deep down. But I was afraid no one else would care about that person. I was so far into the closet, I found like Narnia back there. I laugh and nod. I think I get it, at least part. No, Cassie, you don't. You're a straight woman. You don't understand it. Idaho Falls is a tough place to grow up if you're not the same as everyone else. Like anywhere, I suppose. Oh, because you're a theater kid you're discriminated against? This reminds me of Glee. You know, roll the clip, roll the clip.
You were right to shine the spotlight on the fact that those kids are minorities. Because you're all minorities. You're in the Glee Club.
So when did you come out, I ask. Last year, he sighs, at my birthday party. I got caught kissing a guy from school. I thought he was gay. And I still think he is, actually. But he was not ready to come out. So he kind of threw me under the bus. Why am I reading it like this? Said I was trying to corrupt him or something. And that is basically why I had to change schools. Why are there no contractions in this sentence? I grab his hand. I, for one, am glad you changed schools. That's the last time my dad spoke to me. Literally, that was the last time. So, let's address it. So, I don't know if Cynthia Hand is queer. She has a husband, but she could be bisexual or pansexual or any one of those in the pantheon of queer people. Like I already said about the all or nothing type of thing, this feels like it's not important to the storyline. It's just shoved in there for a little virtue signal. And I don't like to generally use that term, but it does feel like a virtue signal. It's not important to the plot. It doesn't feel like it needs to be added. I'm trying to say what I need to say. Okay. Not cool. So we just learned that Sebastian is gay, and now we have to sit through this sob story so the author can win liberal points. I was obviously very heated when I wrote this, but it's true. Sebastian is a side character. He is a character who was in the story mostly to further a plot point that didn't turn out for anything. His character is here. Actually, why is his character in this book in the first place? I don't know. For conflict's sake? I don't know. And I don't care that Sebastian's in this book. And it's just this little blurb about Sebastian for no reason. I don't know, guys. I'm tired. I'm tired of this book. Next! I grouped the dialogue and the characters section together because I think so much of the characterization has to do with dialogue and how dialogue is written and how dialogue between characters is. And because the dialogue in this book is so clunky, the characters also appear clunky, and I've already talked about how they're... Oh, moving on. Okay, first to the characters, or caricatures, because, like I said, most of the characterization comes from this book. In this book comes from tropes. So instead of being three-dimensional, flushed-out characters, they're mostly caricatures. They are one-dimensional, not real, not flushed out people. They're just, here's what the shape of a person should be. So, they have traits that don't go any farther than what is going to cause or fix conflict, push the plot forward. So, for example, I already said that I was going to revisit Cassie's grandmother. She is in multiple scenes, but the only reason that she is in these scenes is to, I don't know, for sadness? It doesn't come across. Or to bring up this joke about, you know, the ha-ha moment about Cassie's little sex thing. Remember that I already talked about that? She could be written out of every single scene that she's in, and this book would change little to none. Even less important to this book is Uncle Pete, who I have mentioned none in this book, but I should have mentioned in the conflict section. I forgot to mention him, but Uncle Pete is literally a nothing character. The only reason he's in this book is to tie off a plot thread. Literally to neatly tie off a plot thread. Just like, and side rant, I get so frustrated when authors do that, when they make conflict come to nothing. Like, why would you add this into your book if it adds nothing to the story, if it does nothing, right? You have this whole, he's the one who gives the money so Cassie can go to CLI, and it's like, why would you add this to the book if it's just going to be tied off in a neat little bow and sent off to nothing, and Cassie can get all of her little whims, and ta-da, it's all perfect. Like, why would you do that? It's just frustrating, right? Okay, but like I said, Uncle Pete, never mentioned him before, won't mention him again, because he's a nothing character. He does nothing to this book, adds nothing. Same with the grandma. Because the characterization was done so poorly, the characters were written so poorly, it made the book less interesting to read, blah blah blah, obviously. But I didn't care at all about any of these characters. Every single one of them could have been killed off. This could have become a murder mystery, and I would have liked that better. It could have become so much more interesting. And I would have cared so much more. But it was just a boring book, and I just didn't care about the characters. Her mom could have died, and I would have shed no tears. The only characters that I did care about were the characters who did not directly affect the plot, which were the characters in the letters. So, now, getting into the dialogue. So, I know I keep saying this, but this was maybe the worst thing about the book, just because it was, maybe it's not the worst thing about the book, maybe it's the best thing about the book, because it was so funny to read. I'm gonna read some examples. He calls it respecting my autonomy, so I know Dad's opinion, but what I do is up to me. I was thinking it would be nice to finally have a boyfriend, I confess. That's all. He nods. I can see that. You've had a lot going on over the last year. I bite my lip. You don't think it's too much? That I'm just a meat bag full of hormones and I should wait until things settle down before adding boys to everything else. He snorts. Aren't we all just meatbags full of hormones? He ruffles my bangs. My experience, which, yes, I understand. In my experience, which, yes, I understand, is going to be totally different from your experience. Big life events happen when they're ready to happen, no matter what you've already got going on. What did you guys think of that? I'll let you sit with that, and I'll move on. Are you kidding me? She whispers as we, me, Nyla, and Bastion, pile into Bernice. What just happened? Sorry, I whisper back. I should have asked. It's fine, I guess. But she starts humming the melody of Jesus Take the Wheel to herself on the way to Lucy's. This is a fantastic car, Bastion observes from the back seat as we cruise along. What model is it? A Buick Regal, Nyla says, warming up to him slightly because... Oh my gosh. Even she can't resist any flattery aimed at her precious car. Good call, new guy. Good call. Does your car have a name? He asks, grinning. Please tell me it has a name. Nyla's chin lifts slightly. Her name, she says grandly, is Bernice. She flips over onto her back and stares up at the ceiling. Then after a few seconds, she turns her head toward me and says, Are you going to find your birth mother? I gasp and sit up. You faker! You were supposed to be asleep. She sits up, too. I was asleep, until I wasn't. But then you were in this intensely personal conversation, and I didn't want to interrupt and say, Hey, guess what? I'm awake. I laugh. Ha ha ha. Right. How much did you hear? Enough. So are you going to search for your birth mother? I didn't say I was, did I? No, but it sounded like you were curious. I am curious, I admit. But I don't think you should do it, she says. I'm surprised and weirdly hurt by this. Why? So those are just a few examples, and it's not the worst writing I've ever heard. It's not even the worst writing in this book. Well, some of it was actually some of the worst writing in this book. But it's like... First of all, no one talks like this. And I always go back and forth with the question, do books have to be quote-unquote realistic? Even books like this, like the YA contemporary or whatever. And I always come to the conclusion that they don't have to be generally realistic, especially if you want to like have that good bit of escapism. You're not going to get escapism with this book because you can't escape. But when reading dialogue, I want it to come off as believable. Like, it doesn't have to be altogether realistic because I understand that they're not real people. But I still want to believe that this is not an AI writing this book, right? It feels like the dialogue feels like characters' words on a page and not like characters saying this. You know? Does that make any sense? Probably not. It kept coming back to Nyla because parts of her character were very, like, not very, but were fairly well written. And then other parts were... At other times it felt like she was written as a token and only there to help teach Cassie a lesson or to help further the plot along. And I wanted to love Nyla's character, and I wanted to love what the author did with Nyla because, like I said, the author did good stuff with Nyla. And that's why I was so conflicted about her character. But at the end of the day, it comes back to this: every character is a caricature. Um, Nyla is a caricature of a black girl adopted into a white family in Idaho. So I want to read the first scene that we have with Nyla. Fine, I love you, I grumble. I notice that the elderly couple at the next table over is not so subtly staring at Nyla. It happens. Occasionally people in this white bread Idaho town act surprised when they see a black person. It's what Nyla calls the unicorn effect. People see her and stare like she's some rare and magical creature that they've only heard about in storybooks. Which is weird for Nyla because she was raised by a white family in a white town and doesn't totally identify as an American black. Ooh. That sentence left a bad taste in my tongue. She just feels like she's handled poorly, and I'm a white person, obviously. I'm not going to say whether her character's done well or done poorly. Well, that's literally what I'm saying right now. I'm not going to say that, how do I want to phrase this? This is my perspective these are my thoughts on Nyla as a white person. So I can't give any perspectives as someone who has these experiences, has the experiences as someone who feels racism. I'm just someone who understands bad writing and understands tokenism. And that's so sorry. And Nyla just, her character doesn't feel anything more than just tokenism. I hope that makes sense. Because she just feels like a token at the end of the day. I just don't think that Cynthia Hand has a lot of experience writing POC characters, and maybe I'm wrong, and maybe she's just really bad at writing them. Because the way she wrote them was, I don't know. And maybe I'm looking way too far into this, but it just felt gross. I'm moving on from this. Actually, I'm not moving on from this. On the topic of virtue signaling. Why was this in the book? This got my blood boiling. It didn't need this. This was so bad. I already talked about how this book has way too much conflict. So to catch you up on this, they just won the drama competition, and Nyla won like the best actress, the best actor award, and then they both get scholarships, but only Cassie gets a scholarship only to BSU, and she's like, oh no, why does nothing ever go my way as a white woman in America? And then she says to Nyla, of course you would get the better scholarship, because of course you would get the better scholarship. You, and she basically, no, she literally like says it, like, of course you, the black woman, will get the better scholarship because of this. They want the virtue signaling points. Good one, Cynthia Hand. Way to be self-aware. And Nyla gets obviously pissed about this. Cassie tries to take it back right away. Nyla's obviously mad about it. It leads to this big rift between them. But then, in like the span of, I don't know, 50 to like 75 pages, I don't know, bad with estimating, it's fixed. The whole plot, fixed. Finally, to end it on a positive note. Because if you made it this far, you deserve a prize. In all of this garbage, I continued reading, not only because I wanted to make a rant review, it's because I knew that there would be a letter. So let's just get into it. What made the letters? I think it was because they were everything that the other chapters were not. The characters were genuine and they were believable and they were, get this, they were lovable. The writing was compelling and it was beautiful at times. And the plot in these chapters was interesting and it added more to the story than the plot in the actual chapters did. When I first noticed that the letters were way better than the actual meat of the book, which you're like, what? But because when I was reading the letters, I was like, wow, this is so good, and I sort of became immersed in the chapters. So I was like, wow, and I just was reading them, and it took me a while to realize, wait, this is actually good. This is the same book that I was reading just 5 minutes ago. And it's strange because it's like, that's the same book. How is this the same book? Don't ask me. I didn't write it. But the voice in these chapters is so different because they're two different characters narrating it. But I went over how Cassie's voice is so annoying and Cassie is so annoying and she's so unlikable. But the difference here is S, who is the main character of the letters, I guess, who's the narrator of the letters, her voice is real and compelling and believable and lovable, like I already said. In the language used, her voice comes off as heartbreaking. She's a girl who loves the child she's carrying. Through the writing, I can see the girl, I can see the scenario. It comes to life. It's good writing, right? These two storylines they're the same book. It's not perfect, but compared to the garbage that was the other, I feel genuinely bad saying that, but it was bad writing. Everything about Cassie that was hard to read was the opposite in S. S was snarky and sarcastic and genuine, and she was like, she came off as a teenage girl, whereas Cassie came off as a caricature of a teenage girl. You know what I'm saying? Which is why I'm genuinely frustrated by this book, because there's good reading, there's good writing in this book. This book could have been very good. Well, yeah, it could have been very good. I'll say it. If it was shored down a little bit, sheared down, shore? It was cut down a little bit. If the writing was a little bit less clunky and the characters were a little bit more genuine, then I think it could have been a really good book. But it was just a disappointing, uninspired book. Wrap this up. I wish I hadn't read this book. It was bad. I had to stop several times just to scream. There were actual moments where I just wanted to cry in pain. Yeah, it was a labored read, but I'm gonna give it a solid 1 out of 10. And I would not recommend this book, obviously. Thank you all so much for watching. If you made it this far, you deserve a prize. Go follow my Instagram or not. Okay, that's all I have for today. Bye! Oh my gosh, I just pulled my glasses off my face.